can you remind me if you'll be so kind? Staring out into space, asking God to hear my case, trying to think of all things past. How long will my memory last? The purple angel, purple angel, purple angel, you're next to me.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I am your host, Lori LeBay, founder of Alzheimer Speaks and the radio show, and I appreciate you being with us today. Before we get started with our guest, I do want to just introduce you to Alzheimer Speaks in general, because I know we always get new listeners. And Alzheimer Speaks is an advocacy-based company providing multiple platforms to individuals around the world who are dealing with dementia care. And our goal is to shift our care culture from crisis to comfort worldwide. We believe that by joining forces and sharing knowledge and just having these everyday conversations about life with dementia, that we can remove the stigmas that are attached to memory loss and help those who are living with the disease continue to live on with purpose, as well as their care partners. At our core, we know Alzheimer Speaks is making a difference, and a lot of that has to do with you. You see, your likes, your clicks, your shares with your Facebook friends, your Twitter tribes, your LinkedIn colleagues, your Pinterest pals, all of those small little things that we all kind of take for granted and know that it only takes a couple seconds have really a big impact because you are sharing knowledge with those in need. And many of our friends and colleagues and even family don't talk about what their needs truly are because there's so much embarrassment out there. And through your likes and clicks and shares, you made Alzheimer Speaks the number one influencer online regarding Alzheimer's, according to ShareCare and Dr. Oz. So we really appreciate that because here at Alzheimer Speaks, we believe the only way we're going to win this battle is through collaboration, and that is a true sign of collaboration. I also want to let people know who are listening that one of our goals is to raise everyone's voice. And so if you have a story to tell, we'd love to hear it. Maybe you have written a book. Maybe you are living with the disease and diagnosed yourself or caring for a friend or a loved one. Maybe you provide a business service or you're working on research or you like to advocate for this cause and want people to know exactly how they can get involved and help. We'd like to hear from you. So please reach out to me. And the best way to do that is to go to our website, which is www.alzheimersspeaks.com. And up on the top there, you'll see a big contact button. So you can call me or you can email me or, tweet me, and I will get back to you. But I'd love to hear what you're up to and how we can help you raise your voice so that more people know about the work that you're doing. Now, before I introduce our guest today, I do want to just do a couple of shout-outs to two companies that are giving away some free trials. And the first is audible.com. And there you can get a free book you can download. And it's a great way. We're all so fast-paced and on the run these days. It's nice to be able to listen if you like to walk or run or you're just sitting, relaxing, or driving in the car, listen to a book. And so you can get a free 30-day trial by going to audibletrial.com/social. Again, that's audibletrial.com/social. And then the second one is an accounting system called FreshBooks. And again, there you can get a free 30-day trial by going to gofreshbooks.com/alive. Again, that's gofreshbooks.com/alive. Free is always fun, so I like to be able to mention those. Now, today on the show, we are going to be talking with Reverend Colette, and she is she's just a wonderful woman who has spent the past 7 years of doing research and working with Alzheimer's and other dementias. And she is a graduate of the Episcopal Divinity School and is the rector of the All Saints Episcopal Church in Massachusetts. She is also the chaplain in 2 different senior living facilities, including their memory care units. And she's the author of this wonderful new book called Do This, Remembering Me. And it's about spiritual care for those with Alzheimer's and dementia. Colette lives with her husband and 2 daughters and mother back in Massachusetts. And so welcome. How are you today?
Oh, very good, Lori, and thank you for the opportunity to be on Alzheimer's Speaks, and just want to say what wonderful work you're doing with this vehicle for people to get information and to connect, and just so important. So thank you for the work that you are doing, and that all those who have been on your show or contributed in some way, and all those who listen, just thank you so much for everything that everybody's doing.
Well, great. And I have to apologize because I didn't say your full name, which a lot of people may just want to Google to find your book. But it's
Sure.
Colette Bachand-WOOD.
Yes. So I grew up in a very French-Canadian family, and so that last name is Bachand, Bachand, and then my last name is hyphenated, so it's Bachand-Wood.
Wonderful. Well, I've been kind of digging through your book here, and I like it because it's small and it's just an easy read and one you can throw in your purse. And I found some of the stories in there just fascinating. But why don't we start out first with, have you and your family been personally touched by the disease? That's always nice for our audience to know.
Yeah, so Lori, we have. I began being very interested in Alzheimer's care about 8 or 9 years ago now, and so started my own sort of interest and work in that. And then, lo and behold, as these things happen in life, halfway through some of that work, my father, was diagnosed with probably it was vascular dementia that he had, and so that. That journey and that wondering about those caring components became very personal for our family. And he passed away. It'll be 2 years this August, this summer, of what they just called complications related to dementia. So, yes, witnessed firsthand how it was for my mom as a spouse to go through that. Witnessed firsthand what it was like to see him sort of slip away from being this person in the community that was a beloved attorney in this town of New Bedford, Mass. Just knew everybody, had grown up there, never left town, and was just a very respected and very intelligent, very gentle person. And so, got to watch that sort of slipping away bit by bit. So Lori, it's both personal and very much professional passion. But we've done the walk, and so while it was painful, I'm very grateful too for my dad got to teach me a lot, as dads do, even in his days with dementia. So very, very grateful to have experienced that with him.
Oh, that's nice. And did I miss it? Did you say how long he had dementia?
So, as these things go, one doesn't really know, because people notice signs early on, as particularly a spouse might. So probably he lived with it a good 10 years. My mom will report things that she noticed very early on, and then, as is so often when somebody comes to visit, so the kids come home, right, and all of a sudden, gee, Dad seems fine. What are you talking about? That happens so often. So he probably lived with it a good 10 or 12 years, but really the last 5 were the significant decline.
Okay. Now, you chose to write a book regarding some of your teachings and learnings through this process. Can you tell us why this book is important, and who is your target? Who's going to benefit from it?
Right. So you mentioned in your intro, Lori, collaborative work, and I think that really touches on why this book is important, because for anybody who's trained in spiritual care, going through seminary or other kinds of training, guess what? Nobody ever taught us about any of this. There was never a conversation around, how do you do this, and how will be providing spiritual care to folks who experience Alzheimer's? How is that going to be different? And and I only graduated seminary 10 years ago, so I'm not somebody who left seminary 30 years ago. So it just isn't being taught, and so it became it seemed important to start some kind of conversation. And in terms of who will benefit, I really tried to write it, Lori, so yes, if you're, the pastor from the local congregation church, this is going to be helpful for you. If you're a chaplain working in a facility or a hospital, this will be helpful, but also for families, because, one of the things that I've seen in my work, and I certainly saw in our family, but are that folks who had a faith life together and a spiritual life together, and maybe, a couple who've gone to church for, 50 years together on Sundays, or, families where this was really important. That's one of the things you begin to lose, or at least it feels like you begin to lose, right? Because you can't get, mom to church anymore. And so what really occurred to me is there are ways that even somebody with a very advanced disease can still participate in spiritual rituals and still pray with their family and sort of recreate spiritual times together. So, as I say, while the book, absolutely is good for the professional person, it's also good for anybody who, say has an uncle who's in the nursing home, but he was very religious and he went to church all the time, and he liked to pray, and so that uncle's niece could pick up this book and find lots and lots of tools in it that make those kinds of interactions work and helpful and effective. I think, Lori, sometimes people feel like, I don't know what to do. I don't want to go visit Uncle Tom. He's got dementia, and I'm just terrified. I'm not going to go, And even for local clergy, the same thing. Somebody asks, will you go see my mother? She's in the nursing home. She's got Alzheimer's, but she used to come to church all the time. And, you freeze. You're like, oh, wow, what am I going to do? What am I going to say? Do I even bother? Are they going to even know if I'm going to be there? So I hope that this book just really offers some very practical tools that help people not to be afraid to do those visits.
Yeah, and because there is so much fear and uneasiness of, what do I say? What do I do? How long do I stay?
Right.
Do I talk to him? Do I touch him? Do we do an activity? Expectations.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of endless, and it's kind of sad when you are really comfortable, and you've kind of learned how to just be with somebody and accept them for who they are, to watch another person fidget so much and or not show up at all.
And that's unfortunately feels like what happens a lot, because people feel helpless and they don't know. Can I share one story, Lori?
Sure.
That is in the book, but I think for your listeners someone asked once, well, why did you start doing this, and why did you get interested? And it was really a visit that I had when I was working in hospice care. So this was probably 8 or 9 years ago now. But it was a visit with a woman with very, very advanced Alzheimer's. Just really when she would sit in a chair, and it was, it was some babble soundings, and, but she, the family had said, sure, go visit. She was very religious. So yeah, send the hospice chaplain in, so I had been to see her once or twice before, and it was about maybe my third visit with her. And, she's come from a Roman Catholic background. I could tell via the items in her room, rosary beads and those kinds of things. But this particular day, she really wasn't connecting or engaging. And so I was just about to leave because, felt like, oh, well, this isn't going well today. But I had my communion kit with me from visiting somebody else. And so I sat down and I pulled up her bedside tray and I started to unpack my communion kit, kind of like setting an altar at church. And little chalice and a paten, and I always have a little candle, and if it's Christmas, maybe a sprig of holly, or just things that are pretty and catch your eye and colorful. So she's watching me set all this up. And again, she hasn't connected any kind of words in a very, very long time. But she's watching me set this all up and the counter of her eye, and she kind of stops talking, which she rarely ever did. And then I sort of was finished, and I was just sitting there. I didn't say anything, and she reached down. She took the chalice, and she raised it up in front of her, just like a priest would in church, and she said, "Remember me." And it was this moment, I sort of just sobbed, because I felt like she was teaching me something, that I'm in here and I know what this is. I can't say it. I can't explain it. I can't, but I know, and it's connecting and it's making sense, just by her taking that chalice and lifting it. And so that was such a remarkable moment. She's in there, and God's with her, and she knows what this is. Mm-hmm. And so I decided that for those of us who are spiritual caregivers, whether we're clergy or chaplain, we need to be doing this. Mm-hmm. We really need to be providing this kind of care for people. As I say, you mentioned that word collaborative earlier, mm-hmm. and that's not the spiritual component and well-being of dementia patients is rarely ever addressed. Go into a memory care unit for family members who have folks in a memory care unit. Maybe there's a chaplain that comes, or maybe, Tuesday mornings somebody comes and says the rosary once in a while. Mm-hmm. But it's hard to find places that are actually really have an active spiritual care program in these facilities. And so I think the spiritual well-being of so many people is just being pushed to the side. And yet it's a place where they still can connect and they still can be drawn out. And so for us to not be doing this just feels, it just feels so important to do it, mm-hmm. and to try. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny that you shared that story, because I actually had that page dog-eared in here with Dottie about, I've got to ask her about that story. So it was kind of funny that you spoke of that one, because I just thought that was so touching as well. Now, the other thing I think that you bring up is the importance of the spirituality, but it's also with people with Alzheimer's and dementia, depending on where they are in the process, engaging them differently. Because I see a lot of senior communities and senior housing, for the most part, having programs, but nothing's changed. It's just all the same, right? For one as it is another, and to me, that's the biggest thing in terms of really making a difference and really connecting, is the approach and the style has to change with that. Right.
Right.
Now,
and just a positive care approach that says that we know you're still in there. It just can make such a difference to somebody. I don't know, Laura, I'm sure if you've been through the book, you've seen the reference I make to its Music in Memory program.
Yep.
If any of the listeners wants to see this, if you Google Music in Memory and you click on a little story about a guy named Henry, and it just shows when somebody takes the time to do something personal and specific for him, how literally he comes back and is able to talk in sentences. And that's the same as spiritual care. If somebody can take the time to sit and say these prayers or sing hymns, it touches the same way that other kinds of music does. And actually, I would argue it touches on even a bigger level. But it does take somebody taking the time to do that, and what a difference it can make. And just in terms of making somebody feel calmer, more connected, and valued.
Now, are you familiar with Alzheimer's Music Connect at all? Have you heard of them?
I don't know if it's recently stumbled upon a gentleman out of Harvard University who's doing I don't know if it's the same. I'm not, Laurie, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
They actually have different recordings for different types of religion for people. So it's really pretty cool. You know, they've got hymns and just all different types of things to help people connect on that spiritual level. And you know, music is so powerful, and they have a patent. I think their patent is pending for some technology that allows people, as they listen, it does something to the brain to make them connect for a little bit longer. Process.
Sure.
So that might be a nice resource for you too, and your clients.
Right.
But that music and memories is so powerful. So powerful.
Oh, it's just, and you know, what you see in that video with Henry, that's what I see in the memory care unit when the praying and the singing is done. Mm-hmm. And it's remarkable. And you know, I just want to just jump with joy and explosion and just tell people about it, because every memory care unit should be doing this now. Because look at you know, somebody who was so irritated and is now, you know, fully participating and singing, and it just changes. It just changes so much. And like I said before, and I think it validates that they're still in there. You know, that they're still alive inside. There's still that flame and spirit. And someone that once asked me why I felt so confident about that. And of course, not only because I've seen it so literally, but also when we think of how people understand God and spirituality and so divine presence or higher power, all those terms, that's never, a sense of God has never been something that we could explain or describe with words or even experience words, right? It's not something we understand with our mind. It's something that you understand in your gut and in your heart. And so for me, people with Alzheimer's and dementia don't need words to experience God and to be reminded of God's presence with them, because it's something you feel. And what we know about people with Alzheimer's, right, is they have this sort of emotional memory. Mm-hmm. And so that's where God exists, within that emotional memory. And that's still there. You know, and even like I say, for family members to be able to, and it feels awkward, you know, at first when, you know, if a family member thinks, okay, I'm going to start doing prayers with Mom once a week. And it feels awkward at first, you know, but once you see those little sparks, it just makes it so worth every effort. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. It's so humbling to be part of the connection and to see that happen. And I think, anyways, for me, you know, my mom had dementia for 30 years. It made me be still. You know, it made me be still and be more present. And get comfortable with silence, you know, because we're not a community that's or a society that's comfortable with silence at all. Right. And so it's pretty interesting. And when you mentioned Alive Inside, you know, that is also a video and a movie. So you can see a little short video on YouTube and watch this man react and others as well. I think there's several different pieces to the Alive Inside short trailers, but it's a beautiful thing because not only do you see his reaction, but if you watch carefully, you'll see the whole room change and their reaction to his reaction. And there's just kind of this peacefulness and this happiness that just exudes out of it. And it's something so simple that we can all be part of if we choose to do that. Why don't we talk about in a little bit more depth, if we can, what we know about people's ability to really maintain, you know, their depth of faith. And you had mentioned that it really is an emotional kind of memory that's locked in there and can be triggered. Right.
You know, so if we think about too, well, here's a story and example. I think that lifts up that a little bit. Recently had somebody in the one of the memory care units I work in, and a gentleman passed away, and he was young. He'd had early onset. I don't know his exact age, but he couldn't have been over 65. And so, he went pretty quickly in terms of the disease progression, and it was just very, very sad. He didn't retain a lot of words, but he used to come to my worship service on Friday afternoons, and words weren't big for him, but he whistled everything. Mm-hmm. So every song he sat and whistled perfectly, right on key with every stanza. And he was somebody who was very agitated, and it wasn't every time, but many, many, many of the times he would actually finally sit down and he would just whistle with his eyes closed the entire service. And he was one of these pacers up and down the hall in people's rooms, poking at the nurses, going into everything. I mean, just because he was young, he was healthy, he had energy. But he would get to the service, and like I say, he would just whistle through the whole thing. Well, it was interesting. When he passed away, his wife was in the facility. He died at the facility. And I said something to his wife about how it was always so nice to have him in our service because he whistled all the songs. And she said to me, well, he hasn't gone to church in a very, very long time, so he wasn't a church guy. And, I let that be. But it occurred to me what she was saying is she didn't think he got any value off going to the worship service. Now, she never saw him in it. Mm-hmm. But she was suggesting that because for the last 40 years of his life he hasn't gone to church, then probably he wasn't getting anything out of that. Mm-hmm. But what we remember, right, is that people with advanced Alzheimer's will be most connected to music that they heard from usually, say, the ages 10 to 20, mm-hmm. 10 to 21. So in the years that we're most emotional, so with those preteen years, right, that we're cookies individuals, and then the teenage years, and then so the early 20s when we're young and falling in love, our life's exciting, and we've got jobs. So as emotional people, those are our emotionally high times in life. Mm-hmm. And so the memories attached to those years is what we talk about when we say, oh, they can remember what they did in high school, but they can't remember what they had for lunch. Mm-hmm. And that's why. And so even for this person that was in my unit who passed away, for his wife to say, well, he hasn't been to church since he was, in his teen years. But, those were the years that he was able to go to with the music. So, in fact, was able to very much connect with that feeling and that sense of, and you could see it, he would close his eyes and he would whistle the songs. And, for whatever faith tradition anybody has belonged to, when you walk into a house of worship, whatever kind, you feel different. I mean, nobody can explain it. I can't explain it, but you feel different when you walk into a church or a synagogue, or it just feels different. And you could see that in him. He just would become different. And so I think, for people to remember too, even if somebody were to say, I really didn't go to church much at the end of my adulthood. Well, but, did grandma drag you to church when you were 14? And, these emotional memories are still there. And to be able to tap into them is just such a gift.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I don't know if that answered your question. I forgot what your question was. But it was
no, we had just talked about trying to help them maintain their ability to, tap into that faith, and how do we do that? What is your hope for the book on for both people with dementia and those that care for them with dementia? What do you hope the book will do?
Sure. So, on an individual basis, I'm hoping that it just gives anybody who picks it up maybe one or two things that gives them the confidence to walk into a visit with somebody and be able to bring, however they understand God, be able to bring God to that person. And have them have that connection. So, on a very simple level, as I say, if one daughter picks up one skill to go visit mom with, or even the encouragement, or just, gee, I never thought to try this. then that's remarkable and wonderful. I'm also currently developing 2 types of workshops with this topic, because as I was saying earlier when we started, Lori, people just aren't training people to provide spiritual care for this population. So I'm really hoping to be able to do some teaching. So I've developed 2 workshops. One is for sort of family members and kind of caregivers, so staff at facilities, that kind of thing. So being able to help people develop some skills themselves and sort of awareness. And then the second workshop is for professionals, so clergy and chaplain, again, to be able to learn enough so that they don't feel intimidated or scared to provide that kind of care. There's one story that I also like to share, which is in the book, and it goes back to your thoughts around collaborative work. So when we're caring for somebody with Alzheimer's, right, we bring in the nurse and the social worker and maybe a PT if there's some PT issues, or someone to do meds, so psychologist or whatever. So we put together these teams, and as I say, very rarely do they say, "Oh, let's bring someone from a faith community in," if this person was somebody who belonged to a community. So really being able to lift up the need in the industry for this kind of care. And so the story that I wanted to tell was when I first started doing it, and I was still working in hospice at the time, the hospice agency had a support group, like many do, for people who, caregivers and spouses and family members. And so I was at the support group, and I started to show them some of the things that I do, sort of the interactive, not using a lot of words, but picture books with colors and props, beads and Bibles, and so the sort of tactile. So I was showing this group these various ways that I do the work, and in the back of the corner isn't this lady. She's crying, and so I sort of stopped and I said, "Would it be okay if I asked what your tears are about?" And she said, "Thank you for doing this." She said, "Everybody else has given up on them." And that just spoke such volume in terms of, for so many family members, right, we just feel like, especially if we're not able to keep them home, we feel like so often, it feels like, not that this is really what happens, but it feels like somebody is in a chair and they sit for long periods of time and nobody's engaging them, and nobody's really giving anybody any hope. So often the medical side will focus on what people can't do and what people have lost, and spiritual care focuses on what can we still do and what do we still have. And so it brings really a sense of hope to that person and to that family. And then in terms of, with your question, what do I hope to do with it? I'm also hoping to be able, through these workshops, to help churches become dementia-friendly facilities. Again, not something anybody ever thinks of. Here in Massachusetts, there's an organization called Dementia Friendly Massachusetts, which is going and training every kind of organization you can think of, from police departments to restaurant staff to banks to first responders, on how to work with folks with dementia. And so I've recently gone through their training, and now I'm on a mission to create dementia-friendly churches in Massachusetts. So being able to go into churches and teach about how do you identify somebody with Alzheimer's, what, when you have somebody in your congregation, what does that look like, and how can we still provide a spiritual community for these families? And just while I'm thinking of it, Lori, if I can, my book is Christian-centered, because that's the context that I work as an Episcopal priest. I'm a Christian minister. But really the techniques in here can be for people of any faith tradition, because all faith traditions have rituals, and all faith traditions have music or prayer of some sort, or even prompts. When I say prompts, I mean items that represent a faith. so think of like a menorah or some of the other Buddhist statues, those kinds of items that represent a faith tradition. And so really, while this is Christian-based because it's the context that I work in, the same ideas can be used for any faith tradition that somebody is from. Just being able to look at the same things, music and visual cues, knowing that words really don't work anymore for folks with Alzheimer's and dementia. And so what does work? And so I would encourage any listener who, maybe thinks this is all neat, but they're not of a Christian tradition, that it really can span. God is still God, and God is still in there. And so how can we help them remember that and feel that presence?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Do you do any work with Us Against Alzheimer's, with their clergy against Alzheimer's?
I recently found out about them a few months ago, and I've been reading some of their material. So just starting to, because now that the book's out, really just starting to make all these connections, and that's really hopeful, isn't it? I mean, that there are other people that are talking and looking at it. I think the more that we can your word collaborate, just at the beginning, is haunting me in a very positive way. That collaboratively we can really provide better care for people living and family members. Collaboratively we can do that. So it's wonderful to be able to offer this as a starting tool for people.
I think connecting with them would be really helpful for you and for the book. And they had produced a book on spiritual care, and they did, I want to say it was 17 or 19 different denominations.
Yes, wonderful.
And I remember interviewing, I can't remember if it was pastor or priest, and he said, I learned so much from the other faiths.
Right. Interesting.
In realizing how much we really have in common. And he said one of the meditations that somebody else has used, he now uses it all the time. He just found it very healing and helpful and stuff. So that was kind of cool. With him. So yeah,
wonderful.
Is there anything else that we haven't mentioned that you would like to share with our audience about your book or trainings?
Well, we've touched on a lot, and I would just encourage folks to, especially folks that have people, whether it's in a memory care unit or assisted living, to begin to ask. For example, at a next team meeting, sometimes family members go to these team meetings. Is there any clergy that could come visit, or are there any spiritual programs here? And if not, why not? How are we respecting the full essence of who these people are, mind, body, and spirit? And yes, it's great that we're going to play, a table ping pong game or something. But I think the more people that start talking and perhaps asking facilities to be able to provide that. I do know a facility in Massachusetts that has a huge and really multi-interface chaplaincy department for their seniors, and they have a memory care and assisted living, and it's wonderful to see. And again, I think just nourishes the full essence of who these people, who people are. The old mind, body, spirit piece.
Wonderful.
Let's not forget the spirit.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, thing that keeps us lifted. One of the other pieces in this book that I just thought was kind of beautiful, what you wrote, was some of the most coherent things I've heard these residents say is often after our time of prayer hymns. And then you note, I truly believe that by walking with them through their words and sounds and gestures of church, they connect with the powerful feelings that worshiping evokes from all people of faith. It truly lifts up what we know to be true. And wherever two or three are gathered in God's name, God is there. God has not forgotten them. And I just saw that as really powerful for people to remember. in the process, of itself.
Right.
So, well, why don't we go ahead and give people your contact information, and I'm going to let you go ahead and give them the information that you would like them to have, if it's phone or
Sure.
email or websites. Mm-hmm.
Sure. So an email address that can be used would be my name, Colette Wood. So that's COLETTEBWOOD @Comcast.net. To buy the book, it is available at Amazon, which a lot of people use. Also, churchpublishing.org is another entity that can purchase that way. Sending an email is a great way to start a conversation, to ask questions, or to be able to provide other information. And I am also available for some speaking on it, and now some training in terms of for folks, or for churches, or for clergies, or chaplaincy departments, or hospitals, etc. So that would be the best way to reach me. Okay. I don't have a website yet, but that will be coming.
Mm-hmm. All in time. You can't do everything overnight,
Indeed.
It does.
Indeed.
It is a process. Well, thank you so much for being with us, Colette. It was just truly a pleasure to have you join us today, and I wish you the best of luck.
Well, and I thank you, Lori, and I thank everybody that you've been involved with for everything that you all are doing, because as you said in the beginning, the only chance we have is doing it all together. And so it's I'm among good company when I think of the work that you are doing as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you. You have a blessed week.
Thank you. Take care.
You too. I just want to highlight for people, if you have not had a chance to listen to our last couple of shows, you may want to check those out. We had Gary LeBlanc and Lisa Rodriguez on talking about managing Alzheimer's and dementia behaviors in a healthcare setting. We also had Tom and Karen Brenner on, who use the Montessori method when dealing with dementia, and we talked about removing the doom and gloom from dementia. All of our shows, everything is podcast, so you can go back for years and listen to them. Our next show is going to be entitled The NFL and Brain Injuries, and we are really lucky to have Dr. Jason with us, who was a former football player, and also Mike Durosin, who has a foundation for his brother, Dave Durosin, who ended up taking his life. And it's going to be a really interesting conversation, and that will be held this coming Thursday at 1 o'clock. Also, you can go to alzheimerspeaks.com, and you can find out about our last Dementia Chat session, where we talked about filming and advocacy and video and how that affects them. Our next Dementia Chats will be on June 28th, and those are, of course, free. We also had our last Conscious Caring Resource interview, which is a video interview with behavioral specialist Alon Caspi, and he talked about his wood carving project of a brain that is now on exhibit at Yale University and helping children learn about the brain. And our next interview will be with Claire Webster, who is from Caregiver Crosswalk up in Canada. What else? I want to give a shout out to the Caregiver Alert Center, which is just a fabulous tool you can use to help in case your loved one or client would wander off. You can be all set and ready to go in less than 10 minutes, getting a flyer distributed and sending it out to your buddy list. In closing, I just want to encourage you to go to our website and sign up and pick through our tools. One of them that I think you'll really enjoy, and it's very simple, is called Your Memory Chip. And it focuses on truly being person-centered by, instead of focusing on tasks, focusing on, are they safe, happy, and pain-free. Until next time, have a brilliant day. Bye now.
Well, hi, I'm Lori LeBay,
And I wanted to tell you about Alzheimer Speaks, which is another great podcast. You see, my own mother lived with dementia for 30 years, and I felt lost. Did you know every 3 seconds someone in the world is being diagnosed with dementia? Odds are it's going to hit your families too. We want to help you connect to services, products, tools, research, and stories so you can be prepared. Please subscribe to Alzheimer Speaks on your favorite podcast platform.